Hello, YouTube friends. I am so excited to be here today doing a different kind of video. I am sitting with my partner, Scott, and we are going to talk about how to be a good manager.
I'm excited to be here. We're specifically talking about personality science and how
My favorite.
Exactly, not surprising. How you can apply it as a manager if you're a new manager or if you're looking to up your game as a manager, and how you can apply personality science with your team and be a better manager. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Yeah, we get a lot of reader questions from new managers or managers who've been managing for a long time and need some kind of way to spice up their team. This is also really helpful if you have a difficult employee. Don't worry, I won't tell. So personality science, there's a lot of different things about there, myths about personality science. There's Enneagram and...
Well, let's cover the 5 types of personalities. Just as a reminder, there's other videos you've done on that, but let's cover that just now.
Yes, so the problem is there's other different kinds of personality. There's Enneagram, there's DISC, there's Myers-Briggs, and those are not actually backed in science. This one, it's called the Big 5.
Right.
This is the one that's backed in academic science, and it's so helpful. So this is that every single person on this planet, whether their race, their gender, their culture, has 5 basic personality traits. They are known by Ocean: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, my favorite. Now, every single person falls high or low on these traits. You can also be in the middle. Each of them are a spectrum. What I think is critical for a manager is knowing where you fall on each of these traits and then knowing where each of your employees fall on them.
And oftentimes, as an individual contributor, or when you're not managing someone, you're usually receiving communication rather than putting out a lot of times. And so you might expect everyone to communicate the same way that you do. But you quickly realize as you become a manager, people communicate in very different ways.
Very.
And it tends to be along the lines of what kind of personality type they have.
Exactly right. So we tend to see people through our lens, but the problem is if you are a high open and someone else is a low open, there are problems. And let's start right there. So with openness. So openness is how someone relates to ideas or creativity. Very high open people are super adventurous, creative. They love imagining different things. They can come up with 1,000 different ideas. This is me. And I have problems with high open. Scott is constantly reining me in with...
Well, we have to think about the actual amount of work that it would take to achieve that vision. You're a big idea person for sure. My side of the business is making sure that happens, which can be a little bit challenging sometimes.
Right. So if you have a high open person, they are wonderful for brainstorming and strategizing and collaborating. You want to leverage them for that skill. If you have a low open person, they are really good for tradition, habit, routine, keeping your systems in place. They love repeat. They live in that habit and that ritual. I think the biggest problem that happens is a low open person is trying to get things done. They're trying to stay the course. And then a high open person like me comes in and they're like, I have such a good idea. How about this? How about this? So you have to make sure you leverage them for different times. That is the most important thing I've learned for high opens.
And particularly in meetings, a high open person can tend to want to stay in brainstorm mode. And so having an agenda might help keep them on track, because those ideas are great, but not all the time. Sometimes you need to move forward with the idea you've already picked.
Perfect. So timing is really important with openness, and then giving them an agenda so you have space for high opens and space for low opens. Next one.
Conscientiousness.
Yes. Conscientiousness. So conscientiousness is how you approach details. So if you are high conscientious, you love details. You love alphabetizing, and you love lists, and you love checking things off the list. You love all those details. If you're low conscientious, you like big ideas. You kind of don't want to get bogged down in the details. In fact, details sort of trap you.
And we said you were the conscientious or high open person earlier, but you're actually also very high conscientious.
I'm actually high on most of the traits. Yeah. So I'm high conscientious. By the way, that's not always a good thing. So high conscientious, I love details and lists. You're more in the medium side of conscientiousness. So explain what that's like from medium to low versus high.
Well, it can be particularly challenging when you're dealing with a high conscientious person as someone who's lower in conscientiousness. You say, don't worry about it, which may be the worst thing you can say to a person that is high conscientious.
Yeah.
You believe that it'll be worked out in the end. And so you really need to be cognizant of that fact that they are wanting to know all those details up front. And maybe you don't know the answer to them, and that's okay, but acknowledging that you don't know the answer and then saying that we will plan for them or we will figure out those details can soothe that concern for that person.
So my rule of thumb is, if you are talking to a low conscientious person, do not give them more than 3 details. So what you want to send them an email, it's the big idea, the evidence, and the takeaway. That's it. If you have a high conscientious person, they love proposals, detailed outlines, long agendas, lots of evidence, lots of examples. So you want to make sure you know what that person is. Now, what if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know what my team member is? Luckily, we created a free personality quiz. You can take it as many times as you want. I highly recommend sending this quiz to your team. This is a great Friday lunch exercise. You take your personality quiz and send it to your team and then share results. It's sciencepeople.com/personality. All right,
And
next one.
It brings up so many conversations just from the quiz results as well.
Yes,
which is
you know,
great.
also, it's also really fun if you have the time. Do a meeting where maybe you watch this video as a team. Hi, team. And then you guess. You guess where you think everyone falls, and then everyone takes the quiz, and then you meet again a week later and see if you were accurate or not.
Okay, let's move on to extroversion now.
Extroversion. So we're
3
in
out of
the
5.
Yeah, ocean, the E part of ocean. So extroversion is probably the one you're most familiar with. I call extroversion the cool girl of the personality traits. Everyone talks about extroversion. So high extroverts are extroverts. They love people. Extroversion is how you relate to people. Low on the extroversion scale are introverts, and in the middle of the scale are ambiverts. Most people are actually ambiverts. They're kind of in between. What's important about this is, do you get energy from people, or do people take your energy? The single most important thing to know as a manager is how your team member prefers to communicate. And extroversion is everything. This is everything about extroversion. The reason for this is because a high extrovert loves chats, stop-bys, casual interactions. They'll poke their head in your office. They want to have real in-person interactions.
Or take it even farther, like there's a cliche that business gets done on the golf course, right? Well, that may be for people who like sports and like to schmooze.
Yes.
Only in the last couple of years even has that been recognized as, well, for some people that works, but there's a lot of other kinds of business that can get done in other settings.
Exactly. So think about people on your team. Are they outward socializers? Do they like to talk about things, brainstorm things? Do they like to pop by your office? Or are they inward? Do they like to have planned social time? For them, introverts, they like to collaborate alone. They like to think through things alone. If you have an introvert, you should never put them on the spot for brainstorming. You should never put them on the spot for collaborating. Try to give them as much prep time as you possibly can. Did I get them all for introverts, extroverts?
I think that you did. Also, the other thing to think about is the office plan or the office layout that you have.
Love it, yes.
And that's even more on the individual contributor or your person that you're managing as well. You can give them permission to say, maybe an open desk and an open layout is not where you're going to do your best work. Try to find more of a cubby hole or something like that if you're more of an introvert potentially.
And by the way, every company typically has similar personality traits. Like, for example, very highly technical companies I've noticed have a lot more introverts. For a highly technical company, they might want to have more cubicles or more office walls because they just have more introverts in the office, versus maybe a marketing or an agency where you have a lot of extroverts. They do really well with open floor plans. Yeah.
And that's particularly important in those situations when it does seem like there's an overwhelming kind of majority of people who fit one particular personality type, to really pay attention to your team because there's often one or two who are not going to fit into that and need to make them feel comfortable as well.
Yes, and that is the greatest gift you can give, especially an introvert, is to gift them a safe space for them to collaborate on their terms.
All right, moving on to our penultimate one, which is agreeableness.
That's a big word, penultimate. I like it. Elevating the channel.
It fits.
Elevating the channel, Scott Edwards. Okay, agreeableness. Agreeableness is the hardest one to understand, so I'm going to try to do this one as simply as I can. Agreeableness is how you relate to teamwork. People who are high agreeable love to get along. They love to say yes. They're all about cooperation and collaboration. They typically say yes to everything. They're very agreeable. Low agreeable people typically default to no. They're more skeptical. They have to research something on their own. They have to think about it. They're not going to say yes right away. And yes makes them a little bit uncomfortable. The way that you know this is if you ask someone if they want to go to lunch. A high agreeable person will say, yeah, wherever you want. A low agreeable person will say, let me pull up Yelp and look at all the recent reviews. That's how you know a high agreeable person versus a low agreeable person.
One thing you have to watch out for with agreeableness is they can tend to be steamrolled if someone is highly agreeable. Someone like me maybe has a lot of opinions about things.
Scott is low agreeable on the scale.
And when I offer something like that, a highly agreeable person might agree to it without knowing, hey, can I actually get the work done in that amount of time?
Right.
Or do I agree with this plan? Or any number of those things. So be aware on the agreeableness where you are and where the other person is to make sure that you're giving them an opportunity and space to decide whether they actually agree or not.
Perfect. So high agreeable people, they are people pleasers typically, and they will often say yes without thinking about it. So if you have a high agreeable person on your team, always ask a question in writing. This gives them time to think about, do I really have time for this? Is this my skill set? Looking at their calendar that they can get back to you. A high agreeable person will almost always say yes in person. Almost always. If you have a low agreeable person on your team, do not be offended if they're very skeptical of your idea. Sometimes I nickname low agreeable people dream killers. Dream killers are the ones who are like, that won't work. I need data, more research. I don't think so. Now, dream killers can be very hard in the creative zone. Collaboration, creativity, it's hard to have that negativity, but they can be extremely helpful when you're practicing for a client pitch. Oh, it is great to have a low agreeable person in the room before a pitch. They ask the hardest questions. They don't give you any nonverbal feedback. They don't nod. They don't smile. You actually need that because they can be much even harder than your client. So think about both.
And you can turn that into an asset as well. And maybe there are some holes in your idea that might need to be patched, or you need to have a defense when you're going to be pitching that idea around.
And I'll say this before we get to our last one. I hope that you're noticing that there's no right or wrong. There's no best, right? It's not better to be high or low. Every single trait can be optimized as long as you know what someone truly is. There's no right or wrong.
Awareness is perhaps the biggest key here, right?
Very
Then
much.
you can understand why a certain dynamic maybe continues to happen and how you can fix that in the future.
Hopefully it'll be a game changer for your team. Last one.
Last one.
My favorite.
Let's go to neuroticism.
Okay, neuroticism is my favorite. No one ever likes to say I'm a high neurotic, but remember that neurotics are very interesting because they have a different approach to worry. So neuroticism is your approach to worry or emotional stability. High neurotics are typically more moody. They typically have more emotions. They also regulate their internal environment based on external sources. So if something is stressful on the outside, they get a hard email or a difficult call from a client, or even someone gives them a negative voice tone or an eye roll, they immediately become upset by that, and it takes them longer to calm down. Whereas low neurotics are emotionally stable. They're your rocks. They're calm and easy. They have very little mood fluctuation. This is good and bad. You need both. So actually, you are low neurotic, very stable.
Well, and what you see on the exterior, the surface, is calmness. It can often be internal processing as well.
Yes.
So particularly when someone is quiet, maybe then you know them to be low neurotic, they might be in their own headspace, trying to think about it, trying to mull it over, and analyze what just happened or what they're feeling about that.
Exactly. So here's the most important thing to know for neuroticism. How does your team member process worry? If you get a bad review or a bad client email or a hard call, some neurotics want to process internally. They want to sort of stew over it. They want to analyze. They want to take a moment to themselves. Some neurotics are external verbalizers. They want to talk it through, talk it to death, get all options on the table, do every pro and con list. So it's really important to know how they worry, if they're outside worriers or inside worriers, so you can give them the space to be able to do it.
So that's all 5. The big takeaway is make sure you know where your teammates are and where they fall on all 5 of those dynamics. Would you review them one more time for us?
Sure. Openness, how you approach ideas. Conscientiousness, how you approach details. Extroversion, how you approach people. Agreeableness, how you approach teamwork. And neuroticism, my favorite, how you approach worry. Make sure you test yourself first and then test your team. Watch this with your team, sciencepeople.com/personality. Thanks for brainstorming with me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Hey, I want to tell you one more thing. You are amazing. The question is, do you know how to share it? I'd love to help. I save my very best tips for my insider subscribers. Subscribe for free at scienceofpeople.com. I know your inbox is sacred, so I promise to send you only emails you will love. Hello, YouTube friends. I have a special video today where I am sitting with my partner, Scott, and we're going to talk about management and how to be a good manager.
Exactly, and we're here to talk about, darn it.
That's why I said the intro is the hardest.
It's the hardest part.
That's
Okay, sorry.
right.
Okay.
I will do that again. Hello, YouTube friends. I am excited today. We're doing a different kind of video where I'm sitting down with my partner, Scott, and we're going to talk about how to be a good manager.
Indeed, I'm happy to be here. Thanks to be, Okay, I'm really good. Okay.
You got it, right?
Okay, we're good.
Once we get into it, it's fine. I told you the intro is the hardest.
Why am I not the on-camera personality? I don't understand. Okay.
Okay. I would say happy to be here.
Happy to be here, and then go.
Specifically,
yeah,
we're talking.
Got it. I know.
Okay.